So a customer of ours at Trade Canary recently asked a great question. So he said on one of the search algorithms that he had set up, he said he got an email alert on several stocks that might be a buying opportunity. And one of those was PSN. And he said, what steps should I do to basically verify if this is possibly a good deal or a bad deal, or how would I look that up in this case? So in this case, off the top of my head, I don't know anything about this PSN, but it doesn't matter because we can still search this and learn a great deal about it. So inside of Trade Canary, I would go to where it says search right here, and I just type in the stock ticker or the name of the company, in this case, PSN. I'll see it right here. PSN, I'll click that. And it'll load some stuff in a few seconds here. And right here, it gives a brief blurb on what the business is. So in this case, it looks like they're a leading provider on basically technology on the defense, intelligence, and infrastructure side. And if you want some more information on it, you can always Google it. Or I also find just if you use something like Chat GPT and just say, hey, summarize what this business does in a few sentences or less, you can oftentimes get a pretty good idea. And I start there because I want to know, hey, what is the field that it's currently in? If it sounds like it's a field that has a lot of possibilities or might be on the rise, that's probably a pretty good indicator. Whereas it sounds like, hey, they're like a Blockbuster and they're renting physical VHS and DVDs, I'm probably going to stay away from that. The second thing I look at is right here in the middle at the fundamentals and the technicals. Now, I want to mostly be seeing green. It's perfectly okay if there's a few of like the red or the gray marks on it, but if it's like mostly entirely all green, that's very good. And in this case, it's entirely almost all green. They make money, the debt is under control. They have revenue and earnings increase from last quarter. They generate free cash flow. All that stuff right there. The only somewhat downside of it, it says the price to book is expensive. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I don't think I've seen any stock out there that does not have at least one or two bad things on it. But you want to make sure again that's mostly green. Then you can scroll down here, and this is the next bit that I look at. Right here is the 5-year stock price chart, and you can kind of see where it's at right now. So before I dive into anything, I first see, hey, where is it at now, and when and where was it last at that price? So you see, it's right around here, and you see, hey, it took, a recent dive, only... It looks like maybe maybe 8 months back, 7-8 months back or so, right there. And the last time it was there was a year or so prior to that, right there. So you see right here, hey, it looks like it has possibly a little bit of support right here. If it were to basically dip substantially below that, I might be a little worried and want to find out, exactly why is it going down even more. But if it seems to have some support around that level and, maybe has a little bit of a bounce up, that could be a very good sign that it could possibly jump back up there, or that it has some support, so it might not go lower. And then I also look at the chart right below that, which is the industry strength versus the stock in question, in this case, PSN. So it looks at other stocks in that industry in the same category as PSN and sees how they go relative to PSN. So what the strength of the stock is relative to essentially the industry as a whole. In this case, the information technology services. So we see the industry as a whole is right here in blue, whereas the stock in question is in the purple. And basically, if you see kind of like what I'd call like a light, greenish color, that's where it's saying, hey, it's maybe starting to get in, a possible buy signal, or starting to get, like the stock has been like, probably hit and, might be a good time to look at it. Whereas if it gets dark green, like you see right here, that's where it usually will flash a buy signal. Whereas when you see red, that does not mean sell. It just means caution. It means it's relatively high, on the strength right there, which is usually an indicator the stock might come down. So right here, you see it was red right prior to here, and there's a little bit of a dip after that. Started to be a light green right there, a little bit of an increase right there. Has some caution right here, dips down, has some major caution up here, and as you can see, right after that, plummets down, and it has the buy signals right around here, and you see it skyrockets up from what looks like around like upper or probably like mid 50s, went up to about close to 80, 82-ish or so right there. But then right around there, we start to see the red again. And after a short while, we see, hey, it plummets down. And right here, we see it's, not quite a dark green buy, but it's kind of like a light green. So starting to get in the territory where, hey, it might be a decent deal. Now, what I personally do is I first look at this and see, hey, first of all, how well does this line up? In this case, it seems to line up quite, good here. So because it's a light green and not a dark green, I'd say, hey, maybe I'd want to dip my toes, not go like, crazy in or anything like that. Maybe I dip my toes right here. And if it dips, a good chunk further, as long as the narrative hasn't changed, I would maybe dollar cost average into it at that point right there. But before we do that, there's a few more things that we can check. First, right here, we see like how many calls or puts there are relative to each other right there. I don't pay as much attention to that because the market as a whole is, they oftentimes panic, too soon. And they oftentimes jump in too late and all that. So I don't care as much about that. I will briefly look at what the average analyst target is. I don't pay a ton of attention to it, but if I see they're way higher than what the price is today, that's a pretty good sign. And right now, the price at this time was about 63. Average analyst target is 90. Hey, that's about a 50% increase. Not all that bad. Most of them are saying buy, some saying hold. You can see the history of the price right here. You see it's definitely on the low end right here. So, that's potentially a good sign right there. You get some other information on the charts here, like how their cash flow and revenue and all that stuff looks like. You can also see if there's any insider buying. Looks like the last one was towards the start of this year where someone increased their essentially total position by about a fifth, and they put a bit shy of $500,000 more down where they bought at the retail price at about $58 right there. So that's a pretty good sign right there. And then I scroll down to the news and see, hey, is there anything bad that I should be aware of? Like, I don't quite know because I don't know the stock. It's not one that, I follow or anything like that. I try to see, hey, what is there out there? And I see right here, as a whole, it's relatively bullish, but there's, a chunk of bearish. The most recent one that we see from just a couple days back, looks like one of the analysts lowered their target a bit. They talked about the stock having a 23% drop and how it lost an FAA contract. So my guess is that the dip probably happened perhaps because of the loss of the FAA contract, which may have been factored into their stock price. Now, oftentimes with stuff like this, if the company is solid, sometimes news of like a single contract loss or anything like that can sometimes hurt the stock more than it should. So if the company appears solid and they have some news that has hit it hard, that can be possibly a good time to buy back in. For instance, the really good example off the top of my head was with CrowdStrike, which if memory serves, that's kind of like the cyber security place, big one in the world. I think probably the top one used, and they had I don't know if it's 6 months ago or a year ago, but at some point in the last year, they had some kind of issue where a lot of businesses went down, or they had their computer systems went down because they didn't check and update well, and there was some kind of bug in that, and something went wrong, and a lot of people lost a lot of money in that, and the stock completely tanked. But if you sit back, you're like, hey, the business was still doing well. The other businesses, they don't really have a lot of options to easily turn to. It's very hard to pull out of that. So, hey, that could be a good time to buy back in. And sure enough, a short while after that, the stock, skyrocketed back up right there. So that's just the kind of news that you want to look out for. And again, you can read through a bunch of other stuff here and just get like a general idea. And after I read through that and after I know a bit more about the business, that's when I make, basically a decision if I should jump in or not by using Trade Canary right here. So in this case, I'd say, hey, if I don't know a ton about the business, or it's the first time I've heard about it, I might want to dabble into it. Like if I'm buying the stock, I might buy like, just, a little bit to start with, or if it's calls, I might just kind of dip my toes in, not going crazy or anything like that. Because again, if I don't know the business as much, I'm not about to take a huge risk. But if all the stuff here looks good and all the news looks like it's decent, and there's not some like major shift where it's like, hey, this place is going out of business, it's blockbuster video, the game's changing, then it means, hey, this could be a good opportunity. So in this case, I'd say, hey, this is something that I would probably dip my toes in. Now, on the flip side, if I got that alert on a stock that I have very high conviction in, that I know a lot of, it becomes even easier, because at that point, if you really like a certain stock and you know that the narrative of that hasn't really changed, and you know that all the stuff here, it's still showing a lot of green, everything is looking good, not a lot has really changed in that, the news is either, relatively good, or if it's basically bad news, it's like what I call non-news, or, an event that does not really matter in the long run, then that's one that I can make a decision even faster in, and possibly take a larger position in. Like if one of my top 5 stocks had a pretty big dip, and I don't see any reason to really justify that much, that would be one that I personally would probably take maybe a larger jump into investing a bit more, or basically doubling down on. So yeah, hope that helps right here. But once more, again, this is a great way to kind of dive into stocks that you get alerts on, that you think hey, could be a good one, but you're not necessarily too familiar with that specific stock, so you don't want to jump in just based upon that right there. And that's what I do a lot. Like I'll set up alerts. I'll basically go to find opportunities. I'll set up alerts based upon certain algorithms and whatnot, where if I see, for instance, a dip or a certain stock that meets certain criteria, I'll get an email alert to it, but I don't immediately jump in. I then do a little bit of research like this right here, and then I kind of dip my toes in from there. So hope that helps, and happy trading.